Good evening. Can y'all hear me in the back? Stephanie, thank you. Good evening and welcome to the city's community information meeting for our Main Street Bridge Replacement Project. My name's JP Morris. I'm the city's project manager, and we want to give you a high-level overview of our project this evening, give you some ideas of what the bridge is going to look like, our budget, our schedules, and some concerns that we've heard and how we're working to address them. We'll start out with an agenda so you know where we're headed. You have a paper copy of the same presentation in your hands. The screens may be a little awkward to look at, so you can work between the two of them. So we're going to introduce different aspects of the project, the city folks, the consultants, and the project itself. We're going to give you the big overview, talk about the schedule. Our capital improvement projects have what we call typical questions that come with a project like this, so we'll hit a few of those. Talk about how we are going to keep you informed once we go to construction and between now and then as well. Share my contact information, and at the end, address some questions. Start out with a little history here. In a later slide, you see that this bridge was commissioned or put in service around 1954, and that picture at the top of your slide is from the actual construction of the original structure that we're using today. Two elements in these pictures, of course, the modern picture at the bottom, sometime within the last few years. Thanks to VDOT for sharing this on their statewide social media. Sometime within the last few years, we stumbled across it and have it to share with you tonight. But you'll notice the crib walls adjacent to the bridge. We're going to talk about them a little bit and how we're widening the expressway and replacing those walls as well. So now the introductions for city staff. I'm the city's project manager. Once it goes to construction, Mr. Ed Wood is our construction coordinator. He'll be my right hand in the field working with the contractor and our consultant team, who will also be doing construction admin and inspection. He's the city's voice to that team, the contractor, once the contractor's on board. For our design consultants, Schwartz & Associates is a local, well-known structure and bridge, typically highway bridge and retaining wall engineering firm here in town. Wayne Schwartz and Randy Saunders are with us tonight. They're two of the lead engineering designers on this project, taking care of it for us. As for the contractor, that's to be determined. This project uses the typical design, bid, build, procurement method. The city and its consultants come together and put together a set of engineered drawings, specifications, and contract documents, and then we release them to the contractors to bid on. So we'll talk about that schedule when the contractor is going to bid and come on board. And then I'm getting ready to tell you about the project. Now, this not so attractive picture is put there to manage your expectations and prevent concern during construction. Those crib walls I showed you in the previous picture will be replaced with what we call soil nail walls. And this is an interim phase of building a soil nail wall. And you see earth anchors protruding through a concrete wall, okay? That's the ugly that you're going to see during construction. At the end of the presentation, and in these, of course, already in these boards, we have some schematics that show the attractive cover. That's also a structural element that goes on the outside of that wall. But I think it's important that the folks in Lynchburg know when they drive by and see something that looks this rough, that that's not the permanent solution. So the earlier I share that with you, I thought the better. Generally speaking, we want to refresh our memory. The Main Street Bridge interchange is located on the Lynchburg Expressway, which is US 29 business. Two distinct communities most impacted by this work. First is the White Rock Hill community in the southeast quadrant of your image there. And of course, where we are, the greater downtown area. Why replace the bridge? That's a common question. As I mentioned, the bridge was put in service in 1954. The biggest challenge we have with the bridge, right, one of the challenges is the vertical clearance between the bottom of the steel beams and the pavement surface on 29 is too small. The bridge has been hit several times over the years by overhyped vehicles that really shouldn't have been going under it, or vehicles that should have been the proper height. For example, an auto carrier forgot to lower the top deck of his cars, and one of the cars hit the bridge on the top of the trailer. So we need to raise the bridge. And during those hits, those structural elements, those beams have been damaged. In the past, they've been repaired, and because of the repeated history of them being hit, it's more cost-effective this late in the life cycle of a bridge to go ahead and replace it as opposed to the increasing cost of maintenance on it. The bridge is still safe to drive across, but there comes a point in the life of a fixed asset like a bridge that it's in the public's best interest to replace it. And speaking of the life cycle cost, for your information, I've split our cost estimates for the project into 3 distinct tasks. What we're working on right now, the design engineering phase, where the surveyors went out 6 or 8 months ago and surveyed. Wayne and Randy and his people are doing their structural calculations, generating 70, 80 sheets of plans and a project manual. Our landscape architect is working on the aesthetics of both the bridge and the landscaping plan. That work's going on right now. That's a little over $900,000 worth of work. When we go to construction, the engineering services don't stop. To ensure we get the best product put in place, built in accordance with those plans, Ed and Schwartz and Associates will be on site working to verify that the materials the contractor wants to use are correct, verifying they're put in place correct, making sure the concrete is the right mix and is sufficient strength to proceed with the work. So the engineering services and inspections during the construction phase is a little over $870,000. And then right now our estimate for the actual physical improvements, what we pay the contractor to remove and replace the bridge and the work around it, is a little over $7.8 million. A few more aspects of the project I want to tell you about. We've talked about the vertical clearance. So the bridge is going to come up. Both the bottom side of the lower side of the bridge will come higher off of 29. So in turn, the driving surface comes up. Since we're tearing out the bridge completely, we know the expressway has its challenges. And one opportunity for improvement is on what I call the Myerson Road side of the bridge. If you remember that the two loops, the loop to go northbound on the expressway or to take northbound expressway to come behind Myerson Roads and get to downtown on Main Street, there are no acceleration or deceleration lanes for those two loops. So by lengthening the bridge and widening Route 29, we can connect those loops and provide opportunity for acceleration or deceleration. The pedestrian accommodations on the bridge, the sidewalks, will remain the same. There's a high volume of pedestrians on this bridge, and that's one of our concerns during construction. I will talk about it on a later slide, but I wanted to reinforce that that's an important feature of the bridge. The vehicular travel lanes will remain the same on the bridge as we have today. That's projected to be adequate for future traffic projections. And finally, in addition to just replacing the bridge, we acknowledge that this is one of a few gateways into Lynchburg as a whole, as a city, and also a gateway to downtown. And we are putting forth the effort, as you've seen in the renderings outside and up front, to make the bridge itself more attractive than just a plain, ordinary concrete bridge. We are also coordinating certain features, for example, the street lights that go in on our project. They'll be the same as what the utility replacement project downtown is working on. And you've seen some early work this week, maybe, in the quadrants of the interchange where AEP and their contractors have been drilling holes in the ground, putting gravel down for access. That's a utility relocation that goes with this project, both temporarily and permanently. Temporarily, we have to move the lines away from the bridge, because when the contractor brings a crane in to lift the steel, to drive the steel in the ground and build the bridge, those lines need to be out of the way so he can actually put the crane there safely. and not jeopardize the crane operator or his employees. So there'll be a temporary horseshoe, I would call it, where the utility lines go away from the bridge, away from the river. You'll see that come in the next month or so. And then after we're done, those utility lines come back up and parallel the bridge and the sidewalk, very similar to what they are now. One of the concerns that we've heard is about the impact of closing a bridge completely and the impacts to businesses on either side and the traveling public. And impacts to the traveling public and business are two items we always work to minimize in our projects, but we acknowledge in some cases like this one, there's only so much we can do. And from the early part of this project, we sat down as a city, the engineering team and the consultant team, and took a look at what's the most cost-effective and timely way to build this project. Bridge replacements, you can either do what we have here and take the entire bridge out all at once, or you can build them what I would say half and half. You may be familiar with driving up to a bridge and you've got a stoplight on both ends and say the left half is demolished and being rebuilt and one-way traffic is on the right side, okay? So we compared that method with doing it all at once. By taking the entire bridge out all at once like we just did on Kemper Street, we believe that we can build the project in 12 months as opposed to 20. So that's 8 months of impact reduced, 8 months shorter construction duration. And just as important, by reducing that time frame, we believe we can save about $1.4 million. Now, to go with the closure, we have certain detours that'll be in place to get people downtown that would typically be taking that 1B loop behind Myers and Rhodes. And we will have detours in place to address traffic that would typically get from White Rock Hill to downtown and vice versa. We have the boards in here and outside with those mapped up. Also, those are released online through the city's Main Street Bridge website, that you can look at them interactively. And I think it would be more effective to have one-on-one or small group conversations around those after the meeting, as opposed to get into trying to click through them in the presentation. But the big picture of what we want to do first for traffic that would typically come downtown with that 1B loop, our primary detour route for northbound traffic, somewhere between Oddfellows Road and Kemper Street, will have a series of signs that say, downtown traffic, use Kemper Street. And we're going to send that traffic Kemper Street to 12th Street, straight down to Main. 12th Street has recently been repaved and reconditioned. It's in good shape. 12th Street, yes. Kemper Street was rebuilt. Kemper Street Bridge has been rebuilt and re-signalized. So that route is in really good condition, okay? For an insurance plan, between Kemper Street Bridge and Grace Street Bridge, we'll put another sign that says downtown traffic, use Grace Street. So we want the trucks typically to go Kemper Street, but in case somebody drives through the intersection and realizes they missed their turn, they've got a second option. Now, downtown traffic, if you have friends or customers coming from Amherst County across the Carter Glass Bridge that want to come downtown, there's no change. Come across Carter Glass Bridge, take the ramp up to Main Street to the light and take a left. Our project footprint doesn't go up that far. Our project footprint is pretty compact and stays in front of the grand warehouse on this side of the bridge and stays in front of the first or second Myers and Rhodes building. Myers and Rhodes has 3 buildings. It stays in front of the first or second building on the opposite side of the bridge. If you're downtown and you want to go southbound and head out towards Oddfellows Road, that ramp out of town will be, out of downtown, will remain open. The problem to get across the bridge from downtown to White Rock Hill, we address that using 2 routes. If you're downtown, you could go up 12th to Grace and Florida Avenue and take a left on Florida and come back towards Main Street. Or you can take the expressway up to the Grace Street exit. And once you get on the Grace Street, get off the expressway on Grace Street, you can either take Florida Avenue or zip back down the expressway to get to Myers and Rhodes or any of the or Accents and Flags or any of the other businesses or residents that are on Main Street. I think that covers a lot of the detour maps. Again, after the question and answer period, I'll be glad to look at the maps individually with you. Pedestrian accommodations for folks that use that bridge on a daily basis is a significant concern for my project team and I. We know the 1A and the 1B routes for GLTC provide regularly scheduled service to between those two neighborhoods, provide that connectivity, but because of the daily pedestrian usage that we perceive to be there, we're working with GLTC to see what solution we can come up with. And when we have more answers, more options on the potential for supplemental service, we'll roll that out to the community and let folks be aware of that in advance of the project. Another concern we've heard through multiple channels, face-to-face, other organizations, is a concern between the downtown utility work on Main and Church being ongoing and this project starting. The plan and the understanding now is that that work should be substantially complete before we get in the street, and we'll talk about our schedule here in a little bit. They're working diligently to get that work done, and there may be some touch-up work they're still doing, small-scale work, but for the vast majority, the conflict between the two projects is working towards being minimized. So here's our schedule. We are pushing our utility folks. We can only push them so much, but thankfully we have a good relationship, and AEP works well with us to get their relocation work done by the end of July. Schwartz and Associates and their team is working hard to get this engineering work done. The next big event between the city and that group towards the end of this month, last week of the month, one day we're going to sit down with something that's approaching a 90% complete set of documents, and our internal folks, our water engineers, our traffic and road engineers, myself, and their people sit down and go through that 90% of plans from an engineering perspective to make sure they are where we're supposed to be and the city's getting the product we want. And by doing that all in one day, we're going to save some time and have a little more efficient project delivery and keep it moving. The big and important date for us internally right now that we're pushing hard to get to, the interim, the milestone, it's not the finish line, the milestone we're really getting towards is an early September advertisement date. That's when the documents are complete and approved. We run an ad in the newspaper and on the city website. Here, Mr. Contractor, Madam Contractor, please take these documents and give us a price. So we meet with those bidders in September and tell them about the unique features of this project and the unique requirements, the importance of getting it done within that 12-month period. And late September, we open those sealed bids and see who gets the job. October, we award and issue a notice to proceed about the same time, sit down with the contractor at a pre-construction meeting, and that's where we go through the documents again to make sure he understands. He confirms his understandings by telling us who's going to work with him, what products he's using. Here's my schedule. Here's what I really need you to approve from me first. And we go forth and get out in the expressway in October and November. Some frequently asked questions that apply to this project as well as others. Will the surrounding streets be closed to traffic? Local traffic will be maintained at each end of the bridge. The businesses, say between Walnut Street and the bridge, there are certain properties there, there are 3 buildings there. Those property owners will still have access to their buildings behind the contractor's barricades as well. Of course, to the east on Main Street, east of the bridge, that will remain fully open and unimpacted as far as signs and traffic go. But we'll have detour signs throughout the expressway and the neighborhoods appropriate for the detours we have mapped on these boards. Important to the residents and the business as well is emergency vehicle access. Early communication with Lincom is important. We work through their department to notify emergency responders. But in addition to that, as a project manager, I also reach out to the fire and the police department concurrently. You can't over-communicate with those agencies because people's lives and property depend on them. Where will the equipment and materials be stored by the contractor? We don't typically provide that in our contract documents. There's some real estate within the project limits in those grassy areas in the interchange. There's a certain amount of that will be used to store the equipment and the materials, but not as much as you would think. We're working, and we'll restrict that a little bit to protect and preserve as much of the existing vegetation as we have there. There's a lot of mature, healthy landscaping in place, and we're trying to preserve as much of that as we can. School buses and trash trucks are important to residents. Those are two other entities we coordinate with early on. They'll be aware of what we're doing and detour routes before we advertise, and we work directly with the Director of Transportation over at Public Schools to keep them informed, and he in turn keeps his drivers informed. To keep you informed, between now and November of 18, we'll have another public meeting after we get the contractor on board, so we can have a better defined understanding of how he's going to approach the work, and remind folks of how the detours are going to work. We'll use local media sources, both print and broadcast, to keep you informed. We do have a project-specific website on the city's website, and of course through social media. You're invited to follow the city through either Facebook or Twitter, as you please. There again is my contact information. If you have any questions, you have it in your printed copy. I think I've covered everything I intended to. What we're going to do for questions, Trish has a microphone. We record this so the public that couldn't come tonight can have an idea of what's going on. So she'll answer your question. She will bring the mic to you. I tried. I mean, she will bring the microphone to you for you to ask the questions, and I will try my best to answer tonight. So, if you would, the gentleman in the blue shirt was ready first.
Thank you. Two questions, please. One, you mentioned about the buses. We have buses for Amazement Square coming all the way from 29 South and North. North obviously will be fine, but coming from 29 South, will we be able to put signages indicating how to get to Amazement Square on Kemper?
Say if your buses came up 29 from Danville and hit the expressway there at Ward's Road, somewhere between Oddfellows Road, there will be a series of signs saying right lane closed, merge left, because we have to close the right lane so the contractors' people have room to work. That's more than you asked, I know. But somewhere in that area, there will be a sign or a message board that says downtown traffic, use Kemper Street. And that directs them to Kemper and 12th to get to you.
Can we have more specific signage than that? Because as it is you find school buses coming and they're coming here for the first time, or they get lost even now.
We don't typically do business specific.
Well, we're
signage.
not a business, so let's get that straight. Second question, do you have an incentive for the contractor to make sure that it gets done in time, or rather?
As recently as, when did we meet, Monday or Tuesday? As recently as Monday, there are 3 or 4 different incentive, disincentive clauses that we are evaluating for the contract. And until we nail those down, I'm not going to go into detail on them, but yes, there are tools in our toolbox that we can put in this contract that will that'll encourage a diligent approach to the work.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for asking. Who else might have a question?
Will this be strictly a low bid process?
Yes.
Contract? Okay.
Yes, sir. The bidders, because we are using state funds through the Department of Transportation, the bidders will have to be on the VDOT pre-qualified list for bridge construction. So that's how That's how the applicant pool is defined. Yes, sir.
Just for clarification, you said the right lane on 29 will be closed to
Yes.
give room for work, so that will be for the entire year-long duration?
Yes. But for the downtown, for the ramps and loops that remain open, those concrete barricades are installed in a manner that funnels the traffic, allows the traffic to use the existing ramps and loops. It's very similar, if you remember, to how we put the concrete barricades in to replace the retaining wall at the top of the hill at the Gray Street Bridge a few years ago. And it's for the safety of both the traveling public and the men and women that work behind those barricades to remove and replace the bridge.
Hi. So once the detours are in place, will they change, or the detour will be the same for a year?
There should not be any changes to the detour. Now, now's as good a time as any. There will be some night work. The new bridge is about 101 feet long. So that's how many girders? 6, 8. There are 8 steel girders 101 feet long. So those 101 feet long pieces of steel have to be lifted with 2 cranes off a tractor trailer, turned and set. That's not going to be daytime work. That's going to be nighttime work. And there may be slow rolls. In other words, law enforcement would start way back and slow the traffic down long enough for the crane to lift that steel, set it, and the workers secure it. We're going to do that require that to be night work, because you can't impact daytime traffic on the expressway with that type of slow roll. So. Any other questions? Yes, microphone's coming your way.
Thank you. Since realistically, the project will probably go over the time frame, like most projects do, just because of weather and things that come up that we don't know happen with the bridge. Is there any reason why the project has to start in October as opposed to starting like next March? So we're not impacting 2 Christmases, potentially?
Is it safe to say if we started next March, we would still impact 2 Christmases? Okay. If we started in March of 18, it would impact 2 Christmas seasons, most likely.
It would go 18 months.
So that's what you're saying, it's going to
Yes.
go 18 months?
Yeah. By starting this time of year, you have these winter months that you can do demolition. Winter months that you can drive pieces of steel into the ground that make the foundation. There's a lot of work that can be done in the off season of winter by starting this time of year.
So realistically, it's going to impact 2 Christmases anyway?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? In the back, please.
Oh, geez. Just one quick question. I have a business on Church Street, and the detour signs went really well, so my business was not impacted when the end of the street was closed. But because of the routes and the number of detour signs I'm sure we're going to need to get people who may have lived in Lynchburg all their lives but are still confused to downtown from Gray Street or Kemper, is there going to be a plan or a point of contact where if people are taking signs, I grew up in a neighborhood, or detour signs go missing or get damaged, to get them replaced pretty quickly?
One of the responsibilities, everybody heard the question, excuse me. One of the responsibilities of our construction inspectors when we have traffic controls in place, whether it's the detour signs or it's the barrels, cones, barricades on the expressway, is to inspect and make sure all those temporary items are in place and correct, because they are traffic safety features, and safety is paramount on a construction job. Thank you.
They do see, somebody sees the sign missing.
Yeah, thank you, Randy. Randy makes a good point. My contact information will be available as project manager. You can call I just drew a blank. 856 City. Simple enough. Draw a blank on the simple stuff. Call 856 City for any, such as a missing stop sign, missing detour sign that you're aware of. Not just with a construction project, but that's your point of contact for those things. All right, I'm not going to keep you, but I'll stay around if you'd like to ask questions individually. I know some folks are more comfortable that way. Be around here for a little bit to answer any questions you may have. Appreciate you coming out and hope you have a great evening.